Well, it's a very good evening to all of you. I am Protractor Kusal Sinurath Bandara, moderating today's session. So I would like to warmly welcome all of you to this prestigious event organized by the Rotaract Club of University of Peradeniya. As you already know, it has been a while since we successfully completed the intermediate level of our project NextStep 360, one of the signature projects organized by the Rotaract Club of University of Peradeniya. From the academic avenue, we had a writing competition to develop useful skills in writing. So today we will be announcing our talented winners. So let's move into a very short video. Okay, to shine the event, we have invited an amazing personality to educate you on academic writing. As an undergraduate, it is always important to improve our writing skills, especially when writing abstract articles, review articles, and analytical reports. To guide you on this, today we have an amazing personality with us. Joining us today, the senior lecturer of the Department of Electrical and Electronic Engineering, University of Peradeniya, member of the IEEE, member of the editorial board of IEEE Communication Letters, Dr. S.A.H.A. Suraweera. Yes, sir, we warmly welcome you to the NextStep 360 2021. So you can send any question you may have via the Zoom chat. Please direct your questions only to the profiles renamed as questions. Your questions will be answered towards the end of the session. So, yes, sir. Now the platform is yours.
So thank you very much, Kusal. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you
are. Shall I share my screen?
Yes, sir.
Can you also let me know whether I can you can see my slide?
Yes, sir, the screen is visible.
Good evening to all of you. Thank you very much for inviting me to have this presentation. So what I will do is like I will present my presentation is on research paper writing and publishing. As Kasun introduced, I'm a senior lecturer at the Department of Electrical and Electronic Engineering at Faculty of Engineering, University of Peradeniya. So the title of my presentation today is research paper writing and publishing. Let me move on to the second slide. Yeah, so the outline of my presentation is as follows. So I will first introduce you a little bit onto research, and then I will discuss about technical paper writing, the review process, and the publishing ethics, and some advice to wrap up my talk. Kasun, like, shall I switch off my video because I am having some issues with the internet connection?
Okay, sir.
Okay. All right. So I'll start my presentation. So I think all of you are very familiar with the word research. Because these days it's a buzzword, and as well as it's a popular word that comes with the undergraduate education as well. So what is research? So, now, if you take a definition of research, that you can find a lot of definitions related to research. And with all these definitions, one common thing that you can see is there are some common words that comes with these definitions. So first of all, like say, I have picked up some of these definitions. And in the first definition, it says research is a systematic investigation, i.e. the gathering and analysis of information designed to develop or contribute to a generalized knowledge. So here you can see there's a word called systematic investigation. So I think that the purpose of this presentation is to enlighten you about writing abstract as well as research papers. So with this one, you can see that say the word systematic investigation is something that is very important, because the abstract writing or peer review paper writing comes with research. And in research, you need to do something called the systematic investigation, right? Okay, so then if you take the second definition, it says objective of research is to extend human knowledge of physical, biological and social world beyond what is already known. So here you can see that say research, with research you have to do something new as compared to the existing knowledge. Okay. So if you take research, there are, people can classify. Hello.
Sorry for the interruption. So the slides are not moving.
Is it moving now?
Still not, sir. Yeah. Now it's okay, sir. Maybe
there is a small delay. Yeah. Okay. So with the one of the definitions, of research is or categorization of research is called basic research. So basic research is something similar to theoretical work undertaken primarily to acquire new knowledge. So similarly, you can categorize research as applied research. So what is applied research is more towards research which caters practical applications and so on. So the third category of research is experimental development. So those kind of research focuses on product design, as well as designing new devices and new processes and so on. So whatever this category, every type of research is very important. And as undergraduates, I'm sure that say each of you will embark on these kind of different research areas. And then based on the research that you have conducted, you will require to write a abstract or as well as in some cases a full research paper. So the research, normally if you want to do research, the research is based on something called the scientific method. So maybe this itself is a long topic, but however, I will try to give you a basic summary of what is scientific method. So basically you observe your environment, and then you can ask questions related to the environment. That means if you have found some issue, that you can ask questions that whether this kind of thing has been addressed already, or are there any gaps that other people have not considered and so on. So to do that, you normally do something called a literature survey. So the idea or the purpose of the literature survey is to answer or to get answers to the questions, something like whether previous people have considered these kind of problems, as well as whether they have been adequately addressed in the existing literature. So based on that, like say you create something called a hypothesis. It's the research question, right? So that you want to answer or you want to address during your research. So then what you do is normally you do conduct the experiments, right? So you have to design suitable experiments, and then you have to gather data to support your experiment. And based on that, you apply some kind of a methodology, and then you analyze your data, and then you try to find conclusions or research results. So based on that, what you can do is to disseminate the research results. You can start writing about it. And there comes this abstract writing, paper writing, and so on. So, I mean, to summarize, so research is done under the umbrella of a scientific method. So all of you should be very familiar with each of these procedures. I mean, each of these sub-procedures or subcategories of the scientific method. And once you come to the end or the conclusion stage, you can start writing or developing your research paper writing. So basically, I mean, now I think I have given you some idea of what is research. And also, like say, we observe that sometimes due to lack of experience, some people think of maybe classified as research. For example, something related to routine testing, right, or analysis of materials, that's not considered in general as research. So similarly, let's say you computer code or some kind of a software, right? So maybe in a very direct manner, it might not be considered as research. So there are certain things that are being accepted as research, and there are certain things which are not accepted as research. So if you are unsure, the best thing is that you ask your project supervisor or the professor who is in charge of your research, so that you become very familiar with what is research and what is not research. So, now one thing I want to mention before I go into the structure of a research paper is to now, these days, right, you can publish your research in conferences as well as in journals. So there are different kinds of journals that you encounter, and each of these journals have something called a ranking. So the highest ranking journals in a particular field, whether it's in humanities, whether it's in medicine, whether it's in engineering, are called the top journals. So if you can publish your research findings or your results in these kind of top journals, it will be very good for your career, both the undergraduate as well as if somebody wants to embark on postgraduate studies, it will be helpful. So in general, publishing in these top journals is a difficult endeavor. However, like if you try hard, even at undergraduate level, third year and fourth year levels of your studies, you might be able to achieve this task, right? So always normally we try to submit our papers to top journals, because the top journals are the journals which have the highest ranking, as I explained. And then if you have these kind of publications, that will be helpful for your future, right? Both if you want to work in industry as well as if you want to embark on let's say postgraduate studies. So as I mentioned, like say journals have rankings, something called a ranking. So each of you should be aware of these rankings, and then you can discuss with your supervisors when and where to submit your research papers, right? So journal rankings are used to evaluate the impact or the quality of your research. Higher the ranking, or if it is a top journal, it will be it indicates that most of all the research that has been published in this journal are of high impact as well as of the highest quality. So higher the ranking, the more prestige the journal is. And it's, as I mentioned, it is not easy to publish in these kind of top journals, but the rewards are very high. So I think even as undergraduates, you should be familiar with some of these metrics that we use to measure the quality of journals. So one what you call famous metric is called the impact factor, or IF in short. I mean, if you look into internet, you will get the definition, which I have copied into this slide. It says how impact factor is calculated is in this manner. In any given year, the impact factor of a journal is the number of citations received in that year of the articles published in the journal during the 2 preceding years. So for example, now let's take this year, 2021. So how impact factor is calculated is you take the citations or the references which have been published in other journals or conferences in 2020 and 2019 related to this journal, divided by the total number of publications published in this journal in 2019 and 20. So, I mean, if you don't understand this definition at the moment, please don't worry. But what you need to understand is higher the impact factor of a journal, the better its standing is. So impact factor, let's say, however, it's relative. So for example, now if you take in general, in an area such as medicine, right? So the top journals will have a very high impact factor, whereas I have seen that, say, in the fields of mathematics, even the highest ranking or the top journal in that area doesn't have a very, very big impact factor. So the best thing is, of course, higher the impact factor, the better the journal is. However, don't worry whether it's small. The only thing is you have to consider the relevant area. For example, as I mentioned, in medicine, we observe that it's high, and also in mathematics, it's low, and so on. But you can ask from your professor or from your supervisor, what's the journal that has the highest impact factor, and then you can try to submit to that particular journal, and so on. So similarly, there are things called Eigen Factor and H-index. So because I have limited time to explain all of these, I will skip them. However, what I will do is, like, say, some of these slides I will share with you after my presentation, so you can check them and then try to understand their significance related to the journal. So H-index also, as I mentioned, is a kind of a popular metric, and it's also given not only to journals, but also it's given to the individual. So again, higher the H-index, the better your standing as a researcher. So now there's a question, right? How do you select a suitable journal? So as I mentioned, there can be many methods, right? So there's no straightforward answer. So it depends on the scope of your research. So if you have done a very good work, right, a very good research, then it's best that you target a top level journal when you want to submit. So then there are other factors as well. For example, whether the work is biased towards theory. Some of you might do theoretical work, and some of you might do practical work, or a mix of both. So depending on what the content of your research, you should choose a particular journal to submit, and also based on the strength of your research. So if you have found something very strong and something very new, right, definitely you can go for a higher ranked journal. And if the results are not so significant, but still if you believe that, say, the results are worthwhile publishing, you can target a middle level journal, and so on. So how much of results needs to be reported? And some journals have strict page restrictions. So sometimes you have to read the guidelines given by these what you call journals, so that you will find the required guidelines that you should adhere to. For example, some journals mention that you cannot write more than 10 pages, or if you write more than 10 pages, you have to pay an overlap charge, and so on. So you have to read these guidelines before you submit. So recognition of the journal among your peers, that means you can ask your professor or your supervisor about the standing. Standing means the reputation of your journal. Yes.
So sorry for disturbing you again. So, still we can see the definition research slide. So I think there is a.
Sorry. So I mean, in my one, I have advanced. So do you know the reason for this? Like, I mean, in my one, it says, how do you select a suitable journal, the title. Is it an internet delay, or is it has that got something to do with my, I mean, the sharing or something?
Yes, sir. If you can share it again, I think the problem will.
Okay. So shall I share it again?
Okay, sir.
Can you see it now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you, if I, wait a minute, if now, can you see a different slide?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
No, it's okay.
Right? Okay. Thank you very much. So there are different kinds of papers that you can write. I think that's what I also mentioned as abstract only papers and full papers and so on. So there are things called transaction papers or full papers, if you want to name them as in that manner. So basically a full paper is a paper that you write once you do a lengthy research. And letter papers are short, and if you have done something very important, and also you want to convey the results very fast, you can go for letter papers. For example, in my area, which is in engineering, a full paper or a transaction paper will span for about a page limit of between 10 to 15, whereas a letter paper might be about 4 pages or 5 pages long. So having said that, you cannot just directly mention that writing a letter paper is easier as compared to writing a full paper, because in letter paper, as I mentioned, there's a strict page limit of, let's say, 4 or 5 pages. It depends, it varies a little bit depending on your subfield. But anyway, you have to adhere, or I mean, you have to stick to all your, when you're writing, the content should be confined within this page limit, which in most cases a hard thing to do. So similarly, there can be other kinds of journal papers, which we call as magazine papers, tutorial papers, and of course conference papers and technical reports and so on. So magazine paper, the audience that we wish to disseminate our research is wide. Not only undergraduates, graduates, and university academia, but to industry and to a wider audience. So in that way, normally when we write magazine papers, you have to limit the technical content to a level that everybody understands what you have written and so on. So there are different things that you have to study before writing different kinds of research papers. So the best thing, as I mentioned, unfortunately, given the timeline, I cannot explain all these things in detail. However, like say, if you are interested in, from now onwards, you can find all this information. First, one easy method is that you contact your professor or the supervisor. He or she will explain all these things, as well as what you call, you can also check this information from the internet and so on. So let me move on to the important part. So it says technical paper writing. Can Kasun let me know whether you can see this slide?
Yes, sir, we can see.
Okay, thank you very much. Basically, I will discuss some of the important or the salient points of paper writing process. So it varies from individual to individual, and also from subfield to another field. Like in engineering also, if you take, there are subfields: electrical engineering, chemical engineering, civil engineering, and so there are subtle or small differences, minute differences as well as if you take a discipline like humanities, if you take a discipline like management, agriculture, medicine, all these things, also there can be differences. So best thing is, again, you have to consult your supervisor to ask these small differences, so that you are very accustomed to what you should be writing. So normally you start with the idea, you collect data. So this is the scientific approach, as I mentioned you in one of my previous slides. So you collect data, you do experimentation, you build some theory, and you interpret your results, and then you start the writing process. So when you are in a stage, with a stage where you have found interesting results, you can discuss with your professor and start writing. So in some other cases, so you begin with the process somewhere and start adding new material as they arrive. So that means the first approach is more like a bottom-up approach, whereas the second approach that I'm describing with the third dot point is something like a top-down approach, right? Any approach is fine, and it also varies or suits depending on their research type, right? So the idea of a paper is very important, right? As now there are certain criteria that you have to stick, or if you want to get your paper accepted, and there are certain criteria that you have to fulfill. And one important thing is, as I mentioned you, the idea, the research idea of your paper. So basically, some people believe that, say, the idea should be kept to yourself, that there is a possibility that others might copy it and so on. However, it's not so true, right? If you disseminate your main ideas or the research findings through a publication, right, it will be much more beneficial to you. So, and as well as that, as I mentioned you have to collaborate, and collaboration normally will lead to better results, and as well as high quality publications. Collaborate means, like, say, you can collaborate among other undergraduates. In some certain cases, certain labs will have like a hierarchy of, let's say, the supervisors, the professors, as well as the masters and the PhD students, and then the undergraduates and so on. So you can collaborate with all of them, as well as you can collaborate with even research groups in other universities as well. So that will lead to what we call high quality research. So I think you should collaborate, and as well as what we call you can for collaboration these days, there are many platforms, normally online platforms, like you can email, you can use Skype, you can use Zoom, like what we do now, and so on. So and also you can share your files using things like Google Docs and Dropbox and other sharing tools that you know as well. So basically, as I mentioned, like, say, in order to get your publication accepted, there are at least 4 things that you have to fulfill. So one important thing is the novelty. That means the research finding, your research finding should convey something new to the world. So that is what you call as novelty. And it should have sound and solid technical contributions. Maybe you have analyzed something, or you have built up new theory, or you have built up a new practical procedure, and so on. So that is called a technical contribution. So your research work should have some technical contribution. And then your writing should be very good, right? It shouldn't have any grammatical mistakes. It should be perfect. Others can easily understand the ideas that you want to convey, and so on. So the presentation is also very important. And final factor is something called the timeliness of the topic. So basically, that means that the research that you have conducted should be relevant to the current time in 2021, 2020, 22, that time frame, it has to be, in that time frame, it has to be relevant, right? So these are the 4 main things that you have to consider when you're writing a research paper. And if any of these are not fulfilled, right, then most likely your research paper will get rejected. So basically you have to be very careful, and these things have to be in your mind as always when you're writing a research paper, right? Okay. So then one final thing for you is whether you want to submit your research paper, your abstract or your full paper as a conference, into a conference or to a journal. Normally in any field, right, whether it's in medicine, agriculture, management, humanities, engineering, a journal has a high impact and has higher standing as compared to a conference. However, having said that, the conference has a different goal. Now, in the conference, you network with people, you meet other people who are working in this research area, and then you can discuss, you can collaborate, as I mentioned, and then that might lead to other kinds of new publications and so on. On the other hand, journal, like you submit, and then there's something called a review process, and the outcome of the review process is whether your paper is subjected to revisions and then finally to get it accepted or a rejection. So anyway, like say, you can maybe have a strong plan when you do your research and writing. Basically, maybe in certain cases, you can, let's say, submit first to a conference and see what the reviewers think of your research, and then you target a journal paper with that research being further developed. So can you see this slide called paper title?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. So basically, what I'm going to now describe in very in a brief manner is the structure of a paper, right? So I will, given the short time, I will discuss about something called the full paper rather than an abstract paper, because each of the lab report and the abstract paper and the full paper, each of them, has to be described in a lengthy manner, which I will not have time. So I thought that say this is the most important thing out of the abstract and the full paper. So I will describe the structure of the full paper. So every paper has a title. So the title you have to select in a carefully, typically in a descriptive manner. So the title should convey what has been done with your research in a more meaningful manner. So normally, there's no correct title. It can be in certain cases long, and it can be in certain cases short. The best thing is that you look into other research papers or papers with abstracts, right? And then you decide and write a title and show it to the professor or the supervisor, the project supervisor, and so on. So they will be able to give you advice. However, like what I'm going to emphasize with this slide is that a title of a paper is very important, and you should spend some time on writing a suitable title for your research paper. Right? So after the title comes the abstract, something called the abstract. Normally, abstract is a summary or that you use to showcase your result to the world. So normally this has a word limit. Typically in my area, it's about 200 words. And it is the abstract you can consider as the selling point of your research paper, and why others should read your paper, the importance of research results, what has been done. All these things has to be delivered, or they have to be integrated into your abstract. So abstract is normally followed by something called keywords, and keywords are used to, let's say, basically I think other search engines and databases, they use keywords in their literature survey. Like, for example, if somebody types some word, right, say the keywords in your under the abstract will be used to show your research paper as compared to another person's research paper, and so on. So keywords are also very important. And in certain cases, keywords are, you are given a list of keywords and you have to select. And in certain cases, you can write your own keywords that reflects your research in a clear fashion. So abstract should include the purpose of research, a brief description of your work, and also in certain cases, results and so on, right? So you have to state the problem and your approach, your solution, and all these things in a brief manner, because remember I told you there are word limits for abstract. So anyway, the best thing is that now you can read similar research papers, similar abstracts, right? And then basically you can get an idea of how others have written their research, in the abstract. And then you can sometimes get the most important points. And then you can start writing your own abstracts. So as with everything, the more you write, the better you become in writing an abstract. So again, abstract is a very important part of your paper, and you should spend a lot of time polishing your abstract before submitting, and with your paper when you are before you submit. So there are common mistakes. As I told you now, this presentation is fairly long and it carries important things. Due to the time limitation, I cannot explain all these things. So I will do is like say, I will share my slides with all of you, so that even after, after a while, if you have any issues or you want to clarify certain things, you can email me and I can share my expertise with you. So there are certain common mistakes that people do when they're writing abstract. So the idea here is that to emphasize you or to warn you of not to do these kind of mistakes when you are writing abstracts. So then comes after the abstract, the introduction. So introduction is the first section of your research paper, right? And the introduction itself normally is about 3 to 4 paragraphs. So in general, I'm talking in general, it can vary a little bit, but in general, let's say 3, 4, 5 paragraphs. So the first paragraph is in the introduction, you have to give the reasons and the importance of your work, right? And normally the second and the third paragraphs describe the background information and the literature related to your work, and that establishes something called the novelty, as I explained you. And then the final paragraphs, in the paragraph, you can describe about the contribution, the technical contributions, what you have done, what are the new results that you have obtained, and so on in your in your research. So that is that. So again, in the introduction, there are, each of these paragraphs should answer some of the questions, like what is the research problem that you have considered, why it is interesting and why it is important, right? Is it a hard problem or has it been solved to some level by others and so on, right? And what if it has not been solved, what is the reason, and so on. So normally, like say, if you write an introduction that has answers to all of these kind of questions related to your research, you can consider it as a good introduction, right? And remember, people read the introduction before they go into other technical details of your research. So writing the introduction is very, very important in a clear manner, is very, very important. So then I think in certain fields, there's the second section is called related work or the literature survey. So basically you discuss about what other people have done in this research field and so on, right? Okay, so then comes the main, the main body of your research paper. Actually, that is the part where you introduce what you have done in your research, right? So a clear new important technical contribution should have mentioned by the time reader finishes the literature survey. So you have to tell what is missing in the literature, what needs to be achieved in this field and so on. So then when somebody is reading the body or the main part of your paper, they will know, right, what is the problem that you are addressing and so on. So basically now the body can be divided into several parts. So one part you can write something called preliminaries. In preliminaries, you tend to establish things that you will use in your subsequent parts, right? So things like some kind of derivations, right? Some kind of results that you will you want to focus first before going into other parts of your paper and so on. So that section is called preliminaries. And then of course you start writing the main content, right? So the main content includes like your system, right? What you want to analyze, your system and your solution. If you have developed algorithms, and as well as if you have developed some mathematics, analysis, and so on. So I will skip these things because that will take time, and I think when I'm share these slides, you can read about them in detail. And then of course, as I mentioned, in the body, you have to write about your experimentation and what you have done, right? So sometimes some research includes simulation, some research includes actual experimentation, and so on. So basically, I think when you are devising the experiment, devising means like when you are introducing the experimentation, that itself should be carefully thought while you are doing your research, and based on a very comprehensive kind of a experimentation methodology. You have to, you get your, get the data, and then you analyze it, and then with those analysis, you can produce your results that can be mentioned in the body of your research paper. So when you do experimentation, there are certain things, right? How to measure the performance of your experimentation, experiments, and so on. One metric is the sensitivity, scalability, repeatability, and so on. So for example, now I will not go into details of what is sensitivity and scalability. However, repeatability. So this one is very important, right? So if you take research, these days there's something called reproducible research. That means anything that you have reported in your paper, right, or in your abstract, somebody else after reading it should be able to replicate it, right? So that is very important. So otherwise what will happen is these results, they cannot understand or they cannot examine whether your result is a true result or something that somebody has claimed but not so correct, right? So repeatability is very important. So when you design experiments, you have to give all the details, all the parameters, metrics, everything, so that others after reading your paper should be able to replicate or should be able to get the same results that you report in your abstract or the paper. So repeatability is a very important thing. And these days, even when you submit, right, sometimes they will ask you to submit the code, the computer simulation code, as well as data that you have got from your experiment, everything, so that others can reproduce your results. So please keep that as a very important point. Basically then, as you know, research papers, or in certain cases, even in abstract only papers, you have something, to show your results, we use figures. And as you know, you know that there's some thing called a picture is worth 1,000 words. So normally we show these kind of things using diagrams and figures. And these diagrams and figures should be professionally produced using software, right? You are free to use any software that you know. However, they should be very clear. They cannot be fuzzy. The legends has to be clear, the font sizes and the line styles, all these things has to be very precise. So best thing again is to read papers in your area as much as possible, see how their figures are being generated, what they have done, and all these kind of things, so that you can use that as a guideline when you are preparing your figures. So normally most of these kind of publications accept only black and white images, right? In certain cases, you can use color images to show data in a much more meaningful manner or in a clear way. especially if you have a lot of lines and a lot of data points, then maybe only black and white might not be sufficient. So however, like say in certain cases, because color images are harder to print, they ask more money, more kind of a charge to print the color images and so on, right? But these days, some of these journals only have online versions, that means PDF files. So in those kind of journals, maybe the color images are not so, you will be asked to pay the same amount as a black and white image and so on, right? However, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, please read the guidelines, right, of when you're submitting your research work. And that guideline will specifically mention whether the color images will require more fee or not. So these are some of the examples. I think I will skip these, how to produce images. The main idea is that it has to be very professionally looking, as well as the result should be very clear and visible to the reader. So then finally comes the conclusion, right? So the conclusion means what you have achieved out of your result has to be clearly conveyed. So like the abstract, it is a very important part of your research paper, and in most cases, readers will read the conclusions and the abstract before they move on to the main body of of your paper. So the conclusions again should be written in a clear manner, and it has to clearly convey what has been achieved, right? And so on. Again, I recommend you to read a lot of similar papers in your field, so that you get some kind of an idea of what to write and how it is been written, right? Because there can be small differences between one subfield to another subfield, so that you are very accustomed to what you should be writing in a conclusion, right? And in some cases, sometimes people even write things called a future work. In future work, normally you try to write things that can be done in the future relevant to your research and so on, right? So it is not a mandatory requirement. Sometimes you write about it, depending on the context, sometimes you can skip it. So this is, something to do with future work, right? And then you normally have a section called acknowledgements. In acknowledgements, basically you try to acknowledge different sources. Sometimes your research has been funded by sources, right? So you have to acknowledge their funding. And sometimes maybe there are people, right, who have helped you in experiments, who have helped you in building theory and so on. So maybe if you believe that, say, it is, he or she should be given an acknowledgement, you can mention their names and in what manner they have helped you in the research and so on in the acknowledgement section. So acknowledgement section now, so again, like say, there are guidelines, right? Who is the author, right? Who is who should be acknowledged and so on. So best thing is to again read that particular the journal or the place where you want to publish, to get the idea, right, of whom to be mentioned as in your acknowledgements and so on. So here I have given you some, some kind of a copy related to IEEE, that means Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, which is a professional body in the field, in my field, in electrical and electronic engineering, right? So those kind of statements will clearly mention who is the author and who should be acknowledged and so on. And of course, then after the acknowledgement section, we write about references. References related to prior work, right? So sometimes you be used to mention, as I mentioned, we write about previous literature. So in that, you can use references to back up or to support those sentences. And in certain cases, now let's say you have used some theory. that previous abstracts or previous papers have used. So you can, cite them, right? So because to acknowledge their work, previous work, and also to clearly indicate that it is not your work, but something that you borrowed from others and so on. So reference section is also very important. And in references, another important thing for you to remember is to there are styles, right? So when depending on your field, you will stick to a particular style. Either in engineering, IEEE style is common, and in certain other fields, Harvard style, and also there's something called Vancouver style, and all those things are common, right? So all what you need to do is go to internet and go to that particular publications web page, get some idea of how each and every these styles are being written, right, in the references, and just you can use them again as guidelines, and then you can write the references, right? And it's very important, as I told you, presentation, under presentation, to write these references in the correct style as the journal or the publication requires, right? Otherwise, when during the review process, the reviewers will complain about these things, and that might lead to a eventual rejection at the end. So all these things has to be kept in mind. And in certain cases, after the references in a paper, you can write, you can have appendices. So in appendices, sometimes what you can do is, now let's say you have written a very theoretical paper or a mathematical paper, where you can use, you have some key results, and the results, the derivations related to those results, right? Maybe better not to put them into the main body of your research paper, because some people will like to read how you have derived them, but some people may not, because they only need a summary of what you have done. So in that case, it's better to put these kind of detailed derivations, right, into something called an appendix. So if somebody is interested in, he or she will read the appendix and get a clear idea of what has been, how to derive these results. If a person doesn't like that, he or she will skip that appendix and so on. So it depends, right? So the best thing is you can discuss with your professor, and then decide whether to have it in appendix or to have it in the main text of your paper, and so on. So as I told you, please check the grammar, right? And your software, right? Whether you use Microsoft Word or LaTeX, the software that you use to generate research papers, right? They will have something called a grammar check, right? So please check the grammar, as well as you can check the spellings and so on, because if you have these kind of errors, that will not look professional when you submit your papers. And in certain cases, as I mentioned, it can also lead to rejection and so on, right? Okay. So I think I have covered some of the important aspects related to paper writing, right? So as I told you, you have to check the spellings, and you have to check what font size that you have to use, and also you have to read instructions of the manuscript, means like say when you prepare your paper, and so on. So before you submit your research paper for publication. And for typesetting, as I mentioned you, the most common two software that people use are Microsoft Word and LaTeX, right? So I think LaTeX is more used in engineering kind of things, and Microsoft Word, other people also, maybe much more familiar with Microsoft Word and so on. So, before I wrap up, right, because the time has already gone, I need to talk about something in very, very short manner about ethics, right, in publishing or when you're writing a certain thing. So, who is an author? As I mentioned you, the guidelines will clearly tell who should be an author. You have to read it, and then you have to make sure that everybody who you believe should be an author should be listed under authorship, right? And also never ever copy things that falls onto a serious thing called plagiarism, right? there are two kinds of plagiarism. One is called, that's a normal plagiarism, that if you have copied from others, that is a serious offense. And also in other cases, there's something called self-plagiarism. So let's say you have writing your second paper and you copy most of things from your first paper into the second paper, and you think it's okay because it's, after all, it's your own paper, but still it is falling under something called self-plagiarism. So each and every paper should be different as much as possible, right? The ideas cannot be copied from others, as well as even with your own papers, you have to be very careful, right? And these days, it's, as I mentioned, it's very easy to check plagiarism because we have software, right? So for example, if I just want to show, this is some kind of a report that has been generated using a software, and the software will tell you will give you actually something called a similarity scope. So normally, if the similarity score is above 20, it indicates that most of the parts of the paper has been copied from other sources. So this will lead to an immediate rejection, and that will be very reflect very bad on you as well as your supervisors and everybody. So you should never do these kind of malpractices when you are writing abstracts and research papers, right? So I think with that, I think I have covered some of the most important things as much as possible about academic writing, right? Of course, I didn't cover about lab report writing because that itself is another topic, whereas abstract and paper writing are pretty close, and I think I have covered today. So if you have any questions related to what I have discussed, as well as if you want to get further, share your experience, as well as to have some discussion, even after this event, you are free to contact me, right? So with that, I will conclude my main presentation. And if you have any questions now, I'm happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your valuable ideas with us. So I would like to invite you all to fill out the feedback form that is now shared on the chat. Within the past hour, our participants have been sending questions one after another. As the time restricts, we will be answering a few selected questions that have been asked the most. So let's move into the questions. Sir, how someone who has never written these before, but they are passionate about academic writing, and how they can write these first?
So I think it's a very, very important question, because even for me as an undergraduate, of course, those days, the research paper writing was normally done during PhD studies and master's studies. However, these days, even undergraduates write research papers even to top journals. It's a very important question. So normally at the beginning, everything seems to be very difficult, as well as you don't know, the procedure and so on. So the best thing is, I think, first of all these things will start with research. So let's say during, not at the beginning, but let's say at the middle stages of your research, what you can do is, depending on the results that you are getting, you can discuss these results with your professor or the project supervisor. So the project supervisor is a person who has much more experience than you at that stage. So basically, he or she will guide you, right? So it's very important to have a discussion. I think some of our undergraduates, unfortunately, don't interact with academics. So that's a big problem. So if you interact with your supervisor in a what do you call, active manner, so he or she will be able to guide you and getting this initial kind of burden overcome. So it's again, there's not much of theory that, I mean, in a sense that you should do this, you should do that, then you can write a paper. It's like life experience, right? It will come naturally to you as well as it will come to you practically. So best thing I will advise is that you, after you have what you call got some results, then you can discuss these results, not paper writing with the supervisor, the results. So then the supervisor or the professor will tell you that, oh, these results are important, these results should be published, and so on. So at that time, then what you can do is you can start referring to similar papers. I mean, you can ask from your supervisor, or you can check from the internet, and then you download these papers and start reading them, right? At least about 10 research papers before you start writing your own paper, right? So at the beginning, you can maybe get guidelines or the style from those papers, and you try to write in a similar manner. And then you can show it to your supervisor and ask whether you have written it correctly, there are any mistakes, what are the gaps, and so on. So it's a very practical experience, right? And I'm pretty sure maybe even at the end of the first paper that you have written, you might still have doubts, right? But in the second paper, that doubts will be minimized. And in the third paper, you might not even ask a lot of details from your supervisor because you have mastered paper writing, right? So the most important thing is to work on research and also discuss your results with your supervisor.
Thank you very much, sir, for the answer. Okay, the second question, what is the best path to choosing best research topic?
So again, it's a kind of it's giving a direct answer is very, I mean, I would not say it very, very difficult, but it depends. So of course, I mean, I think most of our undergraduates, they get introduced to research during their final year project. So for example, in engineering faculty, we do something called a final year project. So in the final year project, the students will choose a particular research topic in consultation with a professor or a lecturer. So by discussing with a lecturer about an area, right, a subfield that you like, let's say chemistry or physics or electrical engineering or civil engineering or something, even in medicine, whatever, right? So the lecturer would be able to guide you. And also, like say, if you are kind of an independent learner, maybe you can search in the internet, right? If you know the sub area that you are interested in, you can type, right? What are the research, what do you call trends, or what are the research topics that are active in this, let's say in biochemistry or organic chemistry or something like that. So in that manner also, you should be able to get some ideas of what has been already found, what has been, what is been happening now, as well as what are the important things that needs to be discovered in the near future, and so on. So best, there are two things that I will recommend is discuss with your lecturer, and then the second solution, not the solution, like another way is maybe to discuss, to check in the internet or and so on, because these days, I mean, some of the books are also okay, but I mean, I think all of you are more familiar with online sources like PDF files, websites, blogs, and all those kind of things. So in some of the scientific blogs also, you might be able to get some indication of what are the research topics that should be, I mean, not should be undertaken, but the currently active research topics, and so on.
Thank you, sir. For every undergraduate's lab report is common, but in real, marks are not given for us as we wish. What is the reason for that?
And so I think it's a very difficult question to answer, because it highly depends on the the context. So I mean rather than like say the reason, reason behind discussing about that, I think you should get discouraged, right? So in certain cases, the best thing is that say you discuss the reasons directly with the instructor or the lecturer in charge of the practical. And in certain cases, maybe not naturally, we might think that our marks have been reduced due to some unjustified reason. However, maybe as I explained you in the paper writing process, in the lab report writing also, there are some guidelines that you have to stick to, right? So you should have a proper cover page. You should, have some kind of an introduction. Then you have to report your data in the way that you have been taught, as well as you have to do some analysis about the errors, the accuracies, all those things, as well as I mentioned, when you are drawing graphs, that should be drawn in a professional way. And then you have to have a discussion, and the discussion should clearly discuss about what you have done, what you have got, and as well as the implications of those results for your any application and so on. So there are a lot of things. So maybe at the beginning, as I mentioned, due to lack of experience, you might have missed certain sections in your report and so on. So I think normally in every faculty, for each of these sections, there's some kind of a fixed allocated mark. So if you have missed, let's say you have missed the discussion, or the discussion is not up to the correct standard, maybe the marks are not given to you, right? So the best thing is that, say, if you have any doubt, right, discuss with the instructor or the lecturer in charge of the practical and directly inquire, right? What is the reason that I have got a 6 out of 10 or 85 out of 100, not 95 or something, directly, right? Because I think, as I mentioned, you like say most of the students, right, don't discuss these kind of important issues with the lecturers directly, and that because of that, it's unfortunate that these things might happen, right? And so I think it's the whole idea is that, say, you should have a very active discussion with the lecturers and the instructors.
Thank you very much, sir. I believe this webinar was very valuable to each and every one of our enthusiastic participants, including myself. So now let's move on to the awarding ceremony. So let's see the winner of the abstract category. Okay, the winner is S.A.H.A from Faculty of Allied Health Science. Okay, so in this moment, I think Dilmi has connected with us. So Dilmi, what do you think about this competition and the project, as well as the next step 360?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
First, I want to thank ProTrack for organizing this NextStep 360 program for us. I participate all 3 avenues, from beginner level to advanced level. I learned lots of new things. I think it will really help to improve my academic works and career. I participated this competition from abstract category. I really don't think I won that, because the first time I participated research article writing competition, Again, thank RoadTrack for organizing this valuable program for us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Dilmi. So now let's see the winner of the open category. Okay, the winner is S.A.H.A from Faculty of Arts. I think in this moment, Yoshani is with us. So Yoshani, what are your ideas and opinions on this competition?
Good evening, everyone. I guess I'm audible.
Yes.
I am Yashani Eknayaka, a second year undergraduate of University of Peradeniya from Faculty of Arts. So this project and this competition was a huge way to develop our professional writing skills. And also I think I could have a good awareness on professional writing today too. So thank you, sir, for providing us a wonderful awareness on that. And I must be grateful to the organizing committee of NextStep project and the RoadTrack Club of University of Peradeniya for organizing these kinds of valuable projects, and heartily wish them to keep it up. And thank you all the people who supported me for this. Again, I have to say I am very much pleased of this. And thank you very much and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Yoshani, for your wonderful words. So that concludes our awarding ceremony. Now I would like to invite one of the co-chairs of this project, NextStep 360, Protractor, Tipun Deniyavatta, to deliver the word of thanks.
Mali, am I audible?
Yes, I am.
And am I visible?
Yes, yes, sir.
So a very good evening to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. I consider it as a great privilege to address this distinguished gathering at the same time because and honor all the commendable individuals who are there behind the success of this event. So NextStep 360 has been a significant project in RoadTrack Club of University of Peradeniya, and as the final step of the intermediate level of the academic journey, we have completed this awarding ceremony of the academic writing competition in a remarkable manner. So as the project co-chair of NextStep 360, let me pay my heartiest gratitude to all the generous individuals who supported us to make this event a success. We as Rotaractors in University of Peradeniya have always received the blessings and guidance of Dr. B. M. K. Pemasiri, the senior treasurer and the staff advisor of the Rotaractor Club of University of Peradeniya, in order to establish our story of success. So first of all, I would like to give my uttermost gratitude to you, sir, for being there with us whenever we need you. Then and most importantly, I am more than honored to thank our exceptional panelists who was there with us today, sharing valuable insights and enlightening the dream careers of the participants with this innovative guidance. An active member of the IEEE, a gifted member of the editorial board of IEEE Communication Letters, a senior lecturer in Department of Electrical and Electronic Engineering, University of Peradeniya, Dr. S.A.H.A. Suraweera, sir. On behalf of everyone, I would like to pay my sincere gratitude to you for being here with us today. Success story of this session would definitely not be this much impactful if it wasn't for the contribution of our official partner, SLIC, Sri Lanka Insurance Corporation Limited, who are there with us as a backbone to make this impact in the first place. Next, I would like to appreciate the immense support and guidance given by the Career Guidance Unit of University of Peradeniya in order to strengthen our vision and mission. Also, I would like to thank all the participants who are there with us today, trusting our purpose to be a part of this project, NextStep 360. Last but not least, I am very much grateful to my dearest organizing committee who held strong through thick and thin, and all the individuals who have supervised, guided, encouraged, and supported us in every possible way to write the success story of this awarding ceremony. So with that, I would like to mark the end of my vote of thanks while giving each and everyone a big round of appreciation again as a co-chair of NextStep 360. So thank you very much, everyone, and stay safe and sound.
Thank you very much, Tipunaya. So now it's time to offer our great gratitude and heartiest appreciation for today's guest speaker, Dr. S.A.H.A. Suraweera. Okay, so we have come to the end of today's session. I would like to wish you all the best in the future. Stay safe, everyone. Have a good night.